All right, so hello everyone. My name is Barry Heidowitz. I'm a director here at Extreme Labs. To restate, I'll keep an eye out for any questions that you may have. Feel free to type them in the chat section or under the QA section. And as time permits, Josh will pause and try to address any questions that you have. I've also posted my contact info, and then the site where the recording will be posted is also going to be posted in the chat. And so if you have any questions, if you think of anything, please feel free to go ahead and ask. If you think of anything afterward, you can also email me and I can follow up with Josh and any parties. Otherwise, any parties where their insight or info will be helpful. Beyond that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Josh. Okay, thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Barry. So, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are right now. If you're like me in Japan, it is currently 3 o'clock in the morning, and I am energetic as anything right now to start showing you the ability to implement metrics that matter into Power BI. So, I'm going to quickly share with you everything here. So, the topic, as I said, is basically how we're going to use metrics that matter, which is something that we as MCTs are all too familiar with, and using Power BI as a way to visualize and represent the data that we get from metrics that matter. So that is going to be the focus, and I hope that by the end of this little session that you will all be able to either see more the benefits of Power BI, or maybe learn a little bit more about how to use Power BI, or even just maybe see that we can potentially make metrics that matter just a little bit better. We need a Japanese greeting too. I don't know if it's too early for a Japanese greeting for me right now. So, yoroshiku onegaishimasu desu ne. Okay. Okay, so just a little bit about me first. So my name is Josh Bowers. I am an MCT. Some of you here might also be MCTs. Some of you may not be MCTs. But I work for a company in Japan called Volt Edge Learning. In fact, I can see that my colleague Joshua Jones is in the chat as well. So spying on me ever with his watchful hawk eyes. And as an MCT, I have a few certifications, most notably in Power BI data analyst. It's too early for me right now. And also Fabric Analytics Engineer Associate. So dealing with the data analytics side of things is kind of my specialty. But I also have a lot of other different skills as well, such as working with Power Automate and also working with LinkedIn. I'm also a LinkedIn certified insider. So definitely when I can say that I have the experience and knowledge to kind of understand how to incorporate everything into Power BI, as well as utilizing a little bit more of the Power Platform to help me in this endeavor. So feel free to connect with me. I have my LinkedIn here, which I will quickly see if I can put in the chat for you all. So feel free to get in touch with me if you have questions or anything like that. And apart from that, I just hope that you enjoy what I have to bring with everyone. So in terms of what we're going to go over, I'm basically splitting this into 3 parts. So the first part we're going to go over is the metrics that matter side. So we're going to look into preparing the metrics that matter, making sure that everything is ready, maybe look into a little bit of automating it as well. And apart from that, just going over what is metrics that matter and why I'm doing this in the first place, or why we can do this in the first place. We're then going to go into the Power BI side of things. So I'll show you kind of like an example final report that I have made, and then a kind of step-by-step process of what I have come up with to take that metrics that matter data and turn them into these stunning visuals in Power BI. And obviously, this is what could be considered a slight work in progress as well, but there is a potential for upgrades to the Power BI reports I create, and some maybe improvements as well, and those I can talk about as well. You know, nothing's ever perfect. There's always something that can be better, and it's the same in this case as well. So 3 simple things, and we should hopefully have enough time to cover all of them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the metrics that matter. So metrics that matter, you either love it or you hate it. It's literally Marmite in this case for those of you who are from the UK, or Vegemite from America or Australia. But it's important that we understand metrics that matter as MCTs first. If you are brand new MCTs, then it may be something that you've heard about and not fully utilized yet. Those of you who are experienced MCTs definitely know that metrics that matter is very important for us in more ways than one. And again, as I said, you either have a good relationship or a bad relationship with you, with metrics that matter. So the first thing is, why are we using metrics that matter? So Microsoft obviously is requiring MCTs or Microsoft Certified Trainers to utilize metrics that matter as a evaluation platform. It is essentially a way that when MCTs are creating these classes that they're teaching or teaching these classes, they are providing the students with a survey created by metrics that matter that we can then receive to get feedback on the course. And it's not just feedback on us as trainers, but it's feedback on the course content as well. You know, are the labs working fine? Is Microsoft Learn good for it? Is the content right? Is it too short, too long? All of this is included in that metrics that matter survey. So you're providing these class reports that can be used as a way to see if you need to improve in certain areas, or just keep an eye on how you're doing things over time. You know, are you potentially diminishing in terms of quality? Are you getting better? Are you keeping it constant? All of those are useful points of data that we can use and show in Power BI later. It also enables MCTs to evaluate their own skills. So, for example, me, when I'm using metrics that matter, I always like to see, am I providing that energy that I bring to my classes all the time? Am I providing the knowledge that's necessary? And the students are always giving these positive feedbacks to me and these positive comments, and it really shows me, myself, a little bit of self-confidence of my skills as a trainer. And again, that's something that we can use from MTM. Apart from that, we also use it to keep track of what classes we've taught. So as MCTs, especially for renewal purposes, there are certain criteria that we have to meet when it comes to the renewal process, such as number of classes we've taught. We also use it for our performance tracking. So you have to reach a certain level or have to keep a certain level in order to renew as an MCT. So both of these all go into that MCT renewal process. So just a couple of screenshots of what the actual MTM looks like, the metrics that matter looks like. But some of you may or may not use the UI that I currently use, which is the legacy UI, and I will show you why I do that in a bit. So the biggest reason why I felt it necessary myself to incorporate metrics that matter data into Power BI rather than using just metrics that matter itself, I've actually seen a lot of feedback. So recently there was something that was released in the MCT community. I think it was the MCT Lounge, and it was providing feedback on metrics that matter itself. And there's a QR code for those of you who may want to get your phones out and do a sneaky scan of the MTM feedback code. So feel free to give your own feedback. But some examples that I've seen, things like not very intuitive to use, especially for new users, which is true. I remember my first time trying to use metrics that matter, it was not very intuitive. Even to this day, I still struggle to find certain things. It's clunky, ugly, and a mental throwback to 2002. This made me laugh. This was an actual quote from someone. I kind of agree. Metrics that matter isn't the best looker, and it's essentially very old at this point. If you look at it, if you've seen the MTM UI, it's not very modern at this point. In order to view the survey results by classes, we have to navigate further down into several menus. This is true. There are many different buttons you have to keep pressing in order to get to the class that you want and get that survey. Some people are just impatient in that point, or you can get lost very easily. So this is something that we can help with Power BI. The fact that I have to go and run a report to see feedback from a course. So those of you who use MTM, you know that you have to go to the actual class, run the report, and then you see it there, or you can download it after. There's something that I've found which can actually bypass this entire thing. So I'll talk about that in a bit. And just in general, someone wishes that there was an easier way to see their reports. So currently in MTM, you have to go see each individual report, or you can download them and see them that way. But with the Power BI solution that I'm suggesting, you don't actually have to do that. You can keep all of it together in one place and kind of get an overall view of your metrics that matter data. So one of the quotes, as I said, was the having to run the report to see a feedback from a course. So every time you go to metrics that matter, you have to find the class, run the report, and then whether you choose to just view it there or download it, that's it. However, some of you may or may not know that you can actually schedule a report to be sent to you instead. So in metrics that matter, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate this just a little bit. So in metrics that matter, in the reporting section up here, a lot of people are using the slightly more modern Ready Reports and Data Explorer, but I found personally that you get more using the legacy reports. So there is an option here called Legacy Scheduled Report. And by using Legacy Scheduled Reports, you can tell metrics that matter to send you a copy of the report when it's done and when it's created. So for example, I have my class summary report set up so that one day after the class is finished, it will send me an email with a PDF copy of the survey data. So when I go into my emails, I eventually find that email with the attachment. So this is one of the steps that you can do to start this automated process by sending the data as a PDF file. However, there is also something else we got to do. And for those of you who may be thinking right now, why a PDF and why not Excel? Number one, I'm going to explain in PDF why we use PDF in Power BI. But number two, I've experimented with the Excel and found that it does not provide it in the correct format. It's actually pretty buggy and doesn't work as well. So the PDF I've had more success with. But step one is making sure that you can receive automated emails of the survey data once the class has been finished, however many days afterwards. The next step, though, is to automate the process of taking those email attachments, those PDF file attachments that you receive, and putting them somewhere that you can keep for your Power BI data. So a little screenshot of what I've created already. I actually utilized Power Automate for this process. And it was just a simple, very simple workflow that anyone with even a little bit of Power Automate knowledge can do, where I had a trigger of when the email arrives, and that it essentially takes the attachment from the email I've got and creates that file in a specified folder for me. So actually, what I end up with is this folder with all those reports that are sent to me automatically by Metrics That Matter. So by using this automatic report generation system between Metrics That Matter and Power Automate, I now don't have to worry about going to Metrics That Matter and manually creating or manually downloading a report. It's all done for me. Now, I can still go to Metrics That Matter if I want and download the reports if I want, but it's all done for me. So I have saved the journey of having to go there. So this is essentially the first step of automating that process. We then need to start utilizing Power BI with those data surveys that we've created in PDF format. Now, those of you who have any knowledge or experience with Power BI, if any, you'll know that we tend to use things like Excel, SQL servers, or other data sources that usually work with concrete data and provide it in a more consistent format. So why are we using PDF instead? So number one, there is the ability to actually connect to PDF data in Power BI. So in this one, I've done it a little bit different. But what I'm doing instead is rather than connecting to one individual PDF file at a time, I'm actually going to connect to the folder containing all the PDF files. Because the idea is that Metrics That Matter is going to provide me a consistent PDF format with the data. All I have to do is tell Power BI which data I'm using in each PDF file. So by importing from that file, by importing from that folder, I essentially end up by ensuring that the data schema I'm creating is going to be more consistent, that everything comes from the same place. It also enables it so that whenever any new data is added to the folder, I can refresh Power BI and add that data. So once Power BI is set up, you just need to keep adding whatever data you want to your folder, and Power BI will do the rest for you. The biggest challenge was cleaning and transforming the data. So because it's PDF, because it's a little awkward to work with, there's a lot of different cleaning and transformation steps that have to be done. But I'm going to demonstrate for you in a bit using Power BI how I did that. But the idea is essentially you end up with something that looks kind of like this, where you've got columns for each individual criteria that you're being examined on or judged on in the survey. So we got one for the instructor, online delivery, the courseware, the learning effectiveness, the ROI, the environment, and even one for Microsoft Learn as well. So this is what we want to end up with so that we can turn them into visuals that can be used in our reports. Okay. Dan, I see you've got a question. So what type of MTM report did you select to make into a PDF? So I use the class reports. So when I go to my Metrics That Matter and I go to my reporting legacy reports, the one I'm using is the class summary report. So I'll quickly show you when it loads up. The reason I use the class summary is because it's much easier to access the data that I found and also provides average data. So I use the class summary, which is located at the very top here. Okay. But I mean, this could work with virtually any data. Just class summary tends to be the easiest for me. Okay. So we end up with the data. Once we have the data and the schema's made, it's all modeled and everything is ready to be used, we then start taking that data and putting them into whatever visualizations you want. You'll see in a bit, the example that I've made is personally my own preference for what a report should look like for this kind of data, but it's entirely subjective. You can literally choose whatever visualization you think is best, or according to a company or whatever it is as well. And then when you've got the visuals, you can also format your reports. So if you want to make them look a little bit nicer with some colors, add a little bit of conditional formatting on things like your matrix tables if need be, even add bookmarks and buttons in order to kind of make the report more interactive, 100% we can do that as well. Again, I've kind of included this in my finalized report, but formatting, usually in my opinion, is the last thing you do. You're just making it look better and function a little bit nicer. You want to make sure first that all the visuals and data is working as it needs to be first. Okay, so we're going to get into the Power BI. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. You guys are here because you want to see what I've come up with. You know, you're all foaming at the mouth to see what it is I've done with metrics that matter into Power BI. So here it is. Here is essentially a finalized version of my metrics that matter data. So everything is working together. Everything has been formatted the way I feel it needs to be, and everything also interacts with one another. So just to take you through kind of a few of the points that I've got on this report, and then I'm going to go through a quick step-by-step of what I did to create this report. So notice that first I have a couple of slices here. So course name slicer. There are 3 classes that I've taught so far, or three types of classes I've taught. Microsoft 365, PL300 and PL900 as well. So using this, I'm able to filter whatever data I want to look at specifically according to the class type I've done. I can also filter by date. I've got a date slicer here that I've got. So maybe I want to select all my data and look at only in the last 2 months or so. So here's what I've got. It also updates with how many people have responded for me, how many classes I've taught in total. Okay, the ratio of those classes as well. So, okay, so between these 2 dates, I've done 1 MS900 class and 1 PL300 class. I can keep track of my score over time. So if I select all, okay, reset everything. So each data point is its own class that I've taught. And with tooltips, I can find out which class it was. I can look at the specific data, the date it is, things like that. And also, I've got this matrix table to give me more detail if I want to see the numbers exactly. So perhaps I want to look into this 1 PL300 class. Here it is. Here's my data points. Okay, this line little here. This is something that I have added to say that, okay, I want to make sure that everything is above 4 when it comes into those surveys. Sometimes, obviously, things happen and it goes below 4, which is why I have the conditional formatting to show me, okay, this is something that has to be worked on. And with the reset view button, I can basically make sure that no matter what I've done, no matter what I've filtered down to, I can always go back to the start. So this is a fairly simple report, but it's very informative, and it contains all of the MTM data that I have collected from metrics that matter. So here's an example, and because this is actual data that I use, this is actual survey data, I have been very careful to anonymize these students. I do not want to leak their emails. But the idea is that I'm using those reports along with all the different criteria, all from metrics that matter. And by combining them into this model, we are able to present it in a way that anyone can essentially understand. So how do I get to this? How is it that I was able to build this report? Well, we're going to start with a blank report. And from this blank report, we're going to go to get data. And I'm going to connect to a folder. Now, I'm not going to reuse the data I'm already using in that report. I've actually created a secondary folder with 2 test reports. So this is essentially like dummy data to avoid any NDA or any privacy issues. So we're going to connect to this folder. I'm going to find that folder, which I've got hiding in my Extreme Labs here, demo data. Click OK. And here are my 2 test reports. So I've got 2 test reports all in that folder. And what I'm telling Power BI is I want to combine however many PDF files I've got in this folder all together into one data model. So I'm going to go combine and transform, because we have a lot of cleaning to do. So that will open up the Power Query Editor in a second, but first I need to choose which tables I want to add. So when we look at the tables themselves, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, this is essentially what we end up with. So we can kind of see there's a table here, and a table here, and a table here, and so on and so forth. But the only tables that I'm interested in really are this here, and also a little bit of the data up here. Believe it or not, Power BI believes that this is a table as well, but it actually works in our favor. So what we will do, and I'll close this to make sure there's no problems. Table 2 is the first one I'm going to take, because this is the one that contains the date of the classes that we teach, as well as the name of the course, and also it can contain things like who teaches it. So I'm going to click OK on table 2 to open up Power Query Editor. Here we go. So here is the table that we're working with. And just to make things easier, the first thing I'm going to do is going to rename this query, because I know I want this to be my date and course query. Date and course name, so course. And I'm also going to make sure that we clean up this data. So for example, this column here, don't need it. This column here, don't need it. This column, don't need, and this column, don't need. So remove those columns. That leaves us with the report name, a column that contains dates, and a column that contains course names. But there's still a couple of things that we have to get rid of, which thankfully in Power BI is very easy. I can just click on this column and I can just filter out this one here. And that leaves me with dates and the course names. So let's make sure we rename these columns. Date here, course name here. We're going to change this to report. And I'm also going to make sure that this column is set up as a date column. So date. And we now have our first query kind of ready to go. So this is what we're going to use to control when a class was taught and what that class was. There's still more we have to get though. So I'm going to get another source, but because we're using the same folder, I can actually use the recent sources to kind of shortcut this. So same folder here. Same again, combine and transform. And this time we want table 3. So table 3 is the one that has the instructor, online delivery, courseware, learning effectiveness, return on investment, and the environment columns. So we're going to go OK on that. That loads up here. So again, let's do a little bit of cleanup. So I'm going to call this report for a second. We're also going to make sure that rather than having instructor and then my name, it's just instructor. Student is fine, though notice that it's brought in this average result here, which we don't need. So let's filter that out as well, just by clicking here and then average. Okay, so that gives us the 10 rows here. Make sure everything is the correct data type. So text here, and then all the small numbers here. Looks good. Now, something that I found out later, when you are adding more and more data, there becomes a chance for errors to happen. Maybe, for example, a student chose the not applicable on the Likeford scale. When that happens, it can kind of mess up your visuals. It shows it as NaN, which is not what you want to see. So in order to better control where that happens, I have found it is better to separate these criteria into their own queries. So if I had it as one right now, then if one of these, let's say, for example, here, this said NaN, well, to get rid of that, I essentially have to remove the entire row, which means I lose data. But all I want to get rid of is just that one data point. But it's far more easier to control that one data point if the queries are separated. So a simple way of doing this is I just duplicate the queries a few times. So we're going to have one query for each criteria. So this is going to be the instructor, for example. And I'm going to make sure that I keep the report, student, and instructor columns. So I'm going to remove everything else from there. Make sure that these are in the correct place. There we go. What is going on here? There we go. Student and instructor. Okay, and then again, report, student, and online delivery is going to be this one. Move the other ones and call this online delivery. This one, report, student, courseware. Renamed courseware. Courseware. Report, student, and learning effectiveness. Remove other columns. Learning effectiveness. This one is going to be the ROI. So remove that. I'm just going to call this ROI in this case. And the last one is the environment here. So call that environment. So now I have separate queries for each criteria. So if there is an issue with that, let's say that environment being an NaN here, then I can control it from this query rather than having to remove an entire row from the overall query. So what I want to do now is I want to make sure that this is all more easy to manage. And to do that, we're going to merge these queries back together, because what we're doing is essentially allowing these 6 queries to control what goes into the overall query that we're going to use. So I'm going to merge queries, and I'm going to create a new query. We're going to do this with the online delivery. And I'm going to do this by report and student. I'm going to call this MTM criteria, just to make it easier. And we're going to expand this into the online delivery, like so. So now this online delivery and this instructor query are controlling what's in this overall table that I've created. So I can now easily clean and filter from here rather than having to remove data from the main table. But we still have to merge all of them back. So let's go to the next one. That will be courseware. Report, student, 10 of 10. Excellent. And quickly expand that. Good. Okay, and again, we're going to go to learning effectiveness next. Report, student. Learning effectiveness. Okay. Next one we want to do is the ROI. So ROI here and here. So again, the cleaning and transformation step takes the longest, but once it's all created, you don't really have to do much with it afterwards. Maybe a little bit of maintenance, but apart from that, you're pretty much good to go. So make it once and then just slow maintenance over time. And then we get the environment in there and done. So now we've got our full MTM criteria that's getting its data from these 6 queries. But there's one missing. Where's Microsoft Learn? We're missing it. So we need to go get that as well. So I'm going to get recent sources again, go back to my same folder, because the way the PDF has been created by MTM, it unfortunately has put it into a different table. Usually it'll be in table 4. There it is, Microsoft Learn. We're going to do the exact same that we've just done with the other ones. So OK here. And that will bring the query in a second. There we go. So I'm going to rename this as Microsoft Learn. We do not need the average column. Power BI does averages for us. And we're going to rename this to report. And this is what we're going to use. Make sure that the averages are taken out here as well. Filter down those averages. And just like we've done with the others, we're going to merge that query with Microsoft Learn here and here, here and here. And that adds the Microsoft Learn to our MTM criteria. So far, anyone had any questions, Barry? Anything that's being asked at all?
Not right now, just some comments about.
Good.
Oh, wait, here is. Well, there's a comment about possibly automating the process and make a Power BI dashboard.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So this is something that once it's all created and ready, and you publish it to Power BI service, you essentially have a dashboard that can be refreshed on a schedule. So do that schedule refresh to get the data. All you need to make sure is that it has access to the data. So it definitely can be automated in that kind of way. Just making the only problem is, and we're going to come to it later, is the MTM side of things.
Oh, and then there is
yep.
another question. They want to know, does MTM have a document that defines what tables contain what areas for the PDF report?
As far as I'm aware, they do not. Because we're using the legacy reports, it's kind of a little bit old-fashioned. And it's probably something that I'm going to mention towards the end of the session. But at the moment, no, there's no way. But from what I've seen, it's usually table 2, table 3, and table 4 that you want to use in your PDF when you connect to the PDF. Okay, so we have our date and course. We have our MTM criteria. To improve performance, I'm also going to ensure that these individual queries are not loaded into Power BI. This is just to improve a little bit in the performance, but we're still going to utilize the data. So everything has been cleaned, everything's been transformed. So I'm going to close and apply this. And that will give us the data that we can start using in a second to make our lovely visuals. Okay, there we go. So we have our date and course here, and we have our MTM criteria here. Before we start adding them to visuals though, I'm going to go to my table view and I'm going to go to the MTM criteria. So actually first, let's change this date. So we got it in long date format currently. I'm going to change this to the short date instead to make it a little bit nicer. And in the MTM criteria, I want to ensure that Power BI does not sum these numbers for me. I'm not looking for the total summary. I'm looking for the average of these. So very simple, instructor, we're going to go summarization, average, and we're going to do that for each column. So average here, average here, 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 and last one, Microsoft Learn. And that's about all we need to do. In terms of building a relationship, it's not very complicated, really, because it's just 2 tables that we're using. But feel free if you want to try and make it as more complex, if you wanted to include just using each individual Power BI query instead. But for me, simplified, just 2 tables. Okay, so let's start building some visuals. First visual I want to use, we're going to get that clustered column chart. So it looks like this. And in this one, I want to show each of the criteria by course name. So we're going to put course name in there. And we're going to go, and I like to do this in order personally. So we're going to go instructor, online delivery, courseware, I believe it was courseware, learning effectiveness, environment, return on investment, Microsoft Learn, I believe. I could be wrong. Close, it was return on investment, then environment. That's fine. I can just change these around. I'm also going to make sure that the names are a little bit easier to work with by renaming a couple of these rather than just saying average of. So Power BI is calculating the average for me. That is why we do not need any average data from MTM. It's all done for us. There we go. And I'm also going to do a little bit of renaming on the axis as well. So y-axis, for example, we're going to change this to criteria score. So again, this is all formatting stuff and other things you can do as well. You can take the legend and we can put it on the center right side. I think that would be better. And of course, let's make the title a little bit something not so long-winded, such as average criteria score per course. Perfect. And why not? Let's add that constant line in there as well. So we're going to have it as a value of 4. So now we know that if any of these bars go below 4, that's something we've got to work on. So far, we have a visualization that is showing us kind of like the overall average score, depending on which class we're dealing with. So that is that. I see someone has a question here. So could not find a way to get individual trainees data, only classes average. Yes, so I have had the same issue. So getting an individual trainee's data is a little difficult. With MTM though, you are able to, for example, if one person teaches one class and then another person teaches another class and then a third person teaches a different class, those PDF surveys or those survey results will be specific to each person. So there is a way that potentially you can import the data and then filter it by the instructor. So maybe you can find out the individual trainer's data that way by filtering by the instructor. To find a trainee's data though, not so much. It's a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more tricky to deal with. Only the class average is what I've been able to deal with so far. So hopefully that answers your question, Mark. Okay, so we have our average criteria. Let's also add a matrix. So this is all well and good, but I kind of want to see the numbers myself. So we're going to add this matrix table in here, and we're going to add a course name. We're also going to add the, also going to make sure I turn off the, there we go. So we've got course name, and we're also going to add all those in. I found though, to speed things up, if I just copy and paste this one here and just click matrix like this, there we go. It's all there for me already. So beauty of Power BI is that it can keep the same data. You can change the visual, and you can also do conditional formatting in this. So feel free to, you know, go to whatever field you want to deal with and do a little bit of conditional formatting for the background color with the rules. For example, let's say I change this to numbers and go 3, 3, 4, 4, and 5, and then change the numbers to something. So change the colors to red, maybe an orangey color, and a green color. There we go. So we got this one now set up for conditional formatting, and we don't need those subtotals either. So we have a matrix that we can use. Other things we could do as well, those slices, as I said before, we can get slices in here, and let's put the course name in that. So course name. That way I can now filter by whichever course I want to choose. And I can change the style of that as well. I maybe take a drop down instead perhaps, but I think vertical list is fine for this one. Other things we can do, multi-visual cards. So multi-row card here. This is a way that I use of demonstrating how many classes I taught and also how many surveys I received. So the way to do that is we're going to put the student and date in the fields. And the reason we're doing that is because the date of the class is unique to the class itself. So it essentially tells you when you did that class, that's one instance of the class. And the students are, each student gives you a response. So each student equals one survey response. So to do this, we're going to change these to count summarizations and date here, and also going to do count there. So by setting these to count, so it says 10 count of student, but actually that is our survey responses, and 2 count of date, that actually refers to our classes taught. So now you end up with this multi-row card. Then I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, like this. That tells us exactly how many surveys we've got, how many classes we taught, which is important when it comes to things like the MCT renewal. You can also include a line chart if need be. So maybe if you wanted to keep track of things over time, you can include a line chart. To speed things up a little bit, I'm not going to go into all the individual visualizations, but the important part now is that we have the data. You can just put it all into Power BI now, and using whatever visual you want, formatting it however you want. You know, I can put a text box at the top, and I can have it say Bowers Josh MTM survey overview. And then let's change this to something a little bit bigger, like this. So let's move this over here. I can also add another slicer in for me as well, such as, where is it? Slicer. I can also add a date slicer. So now I can filter by dates, and everything is being filtered already. Everything is connected. So there's not much to do in terms of the interactions, but you can change it if you wish. But essentially, you have carte blanche of how you want to show your data. And so you eventually end up with something that looks like this. And it becomes a way more fun and interactive way of seeing all of your MTM data in one place. And when you're done with it, you can just publish it to your Power BI workspace, or if you have a Power BI Pro license, which as MCTs we should, you can also publish it there to be collaborated on. So for example, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to open it up in Power BI. And essentially my report ends up here in Power BI service, and I can start sharing it, for example, with Joshua Jones. I know he's a colleague of mine, so I could share it with him if I wanted to. I could create a dashboard from this if I wanted. So let's, for example, take this visualization and go MTM survey. And then go to dashboard. And there's my dashboard, starting off with the one visual that we got pinned, so on and so forth. So pretty simple to do. The hardest part, honestly, is the transformation and cleaning of the data, which took a little bit of trial and error to get there, but thankfully I managed to work my way through it. Okay, so that was the Power BI side of things. Now, when you have your final dashboard, there are things that we can do as well to kind of improve on the performance of the reports and improve on the how it works. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So this was my overall report that I showed you already. It worked the way I wanted it to. It filtered everything correctly, and I have access to all my data. I published it to the Power BI service, where I also created a dashboard to make things a little bit easier to see. So in this case, I basically pinned the whole thing to a dashboard, and I called it Metrics That Matter in that case. So feel free to create whatever dashboard you want. But here's the thing. I told you from the beginning that this is considered a work in progress. It's not perfect. It's just a way of demonstrating that rather than going through all the hassle of metrics that matter, if we automate the process of creating that data, sending it to us, and then putting it into Power BI, it essentially becomes easier to access. However, there are things to consider. So one thing that was asked before was about individual trainers. So creating reports for multiple trainers, people who teach the same class together, or if you have an organization with multiple trainers in there, how can you find a way to visualize each person's data? So it is possible. The way I imagine this is when you go back to the queries, you can keep the query about the individual instructors in the date and course that I had, the date and course query. You can keep the instructors' names perhaps and find a way to filter by that. You could also potentially utilize row level security. So if you are going to do the route of multiple trainers, maybe use row level security so that each trainer can see their own data. You don't want to make it so that everyone can see everyone else's data. So a little bit of security would be good there. Try to improve the performance. Okay, maybe we can make it a little bit faster somehow, or maybe we can change the visuals to make it a little bit more appealing. We could include some sort of KPI tracker. So some businesses may have KPIs to meet when it comes to training. You can include something like that as a visualization. This is something that is interesting as well, finding a way to kind of streamline the automation. So I know that MTM, I've done a bit of research, has an API connector, which would be way better to connect to with Power BI. However, it doesn't seem to be accessible to us currently, and a bit of a pain in the butt, to be honest. But if we are able to somehow find a way to connect to that connector, then instead of using PDF files, we may be able to just access the data directly. And finally, as I said, we want to connect to something that's a little bit more consistent. So the data that I've been using, depending on what comes in the PDF file itself, unfortunately, MTM has a habit of potentially creating PDF files where the tables are not correct. So I told you table 2, table 3, table 4. And table 4, I've had the most issue with. Table 4 is the one that had the Microsoft Learn. However, I found that in larger data sets, in larger numbers of surveys, that table 4 actually becomes something like table 5 potentially, or maybe even table 3 if it's less amount. So unfortunately, it's not as consistent as I'd like it to be using the PDF. But if we are able to do something like this API connector, then that will make relying on PDFs a thing of the past, and we can use something else. Or alternatively, we can find a way to get data into a centralized Excel file, perhaps. There are many ways we can get around this. But for short-term purposes, it's not bad as is. It's just not consistent to use, unfortunately. So, a quick review. I quickly showed you about how we create those MTM survey reports. So utilizing legacy scheduled reports along with Power Automate, we are able to get the data into one folder that we can use. We are able to import all that data using PDF connectors and folder connectors. I showed you how to clean and transform that data. So not too difficult, but there's still a few things that can be done better. We also visualize the data that we had. So whatever data we're working with, we are able to put it into these nice little visualizations, as you can see here, and format them as well. So it doesn't have to be a blank, boring, black and white visual. You can add a little bit of color, add a little bit of conditional formatting. You can then publish it to the Power BI service. So this is where you'll do collaborating if need be, or sharing it with other people. You can also create a dashboard if you want. And one thing that I didn't really talk about too much is if you do use Power BI Mobile, which is something I do as well, the reports that I create, I can actually view that on my mobile. So no need to log into MTM. I can just view the data on my Power BI dashboard or my Power BI report. So a lot quicker to access. And that is essentially the journey of integrating metrics that matter into Power BI. Does anyone have any questions at all? Barry, have you heard any questions from people?
Additional questions that I've seen. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Then we have is the Microsoft Learn table collecting the learning path completions or the modules with the learning path completion? Is it tracking achievement codes registered within a learning path?
So I will show you very quickly here. So when the Microsoft Learn part, the Microsoft Learn column that we're using comes from the survey itself about the section about Microsoft Learn. So when people have the survey itself, there's this bit here, the Microsoft Learn section. So the course material Microsoft Learn worked effectively. So the students can select on the Likert scale 1 to 5 how well they thought Microsoft Learn was effective, and that is what it's being collected. It's not doing anything regarding to learning path completions or achievements like that. It's literally just the students' opinions on how well Microsoft Learn is effective. So the reason why we're doing this bit here is that this is essentially a summary or average score of everything below it. So maybe in a perfect world, we are able to actually use this data instead so that we can get a little bit more detail. But for now, the average data seems to be working fine as is. Okay. Yeah, any other questions at all, guys? Anything about the metrics that matter? Anything about Power BI? No, I think they're either all falling asleep, Barry, they're all gobsmacked, or they're trying to think of something to get me, testing my Power BI knowledge.
Right.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, guys, I hope that you have either A, learned a little bit more about Power BI's features, or B, found out that we can actually use metrics that matter in a good way using the services that Microsoft themselves give us. So apart from that, I hope you all really enjoyed this session. I'm always happy to teach more on Power BI and show off the features of Power BI wherever I can. Hence why I gave myself the challenge of using metrics that matter in this case. Okay, I think
All right.
that will be it then. So if there are no questions, I'll hand it back to Barry.